So,
Yeah.
so it's a day after Tu B'Shvat, but still, um, it's important to review some of the basic lessons from Tu B'Shvat. So the Mishnah says, Arba Rosh Hashanim Haim, there are 4 Rosh Hashanahs. And one of them is the Rosh Hashanah for fruits, for the new crop. And there's a machlokes, a difference of opinions, if it's the Rosh Chodesh Shvat or Tu B'Shvat, the 15th, and we follow the ruling that it's on the 15th. So first of all, that putting Tu B'Shvat into a category of Arba'a Rosh Hashanah. There are 4 Rosh Hashanahs. That's very significant. The Mishnah classifies this day as one of the 4 Rosh Hashanahs. Mm-hmm. We know that Rosh Hashanah means the head of the year. It's not the beginning of the year, it's the head, Rosh Hashanah. If it were to mean Avram, just the beginning of the year, would say Hatzchalat, Hatchala, Haschola, Hascholas Hashanah. It doesn't say that. Rosh Hashanah. This teaches us that Rosh Hashanah is a head. The head is the nerve center for all of the body. Whatever happens in the body is determined by the head. And that's why it's so important to guard the head. In the Sfarim, in the Sfarim, they talk about refining your character and what we classify as Musar Sfarim. There's lots of discussion about the importance of guarding your head. What do you mean guarding your head? Guarding what goes into your head. What goes into your body, what goes into your behavior is important, very important, but not as important as what goes into your head. Because what goes into your head is the nerve center that will later make opinions and determinations on issues which can lead a person in any way, shape, or form. So that's why the Rosh Hashanah is the Ikar of the Shana. It's the primary day of the year that sets the tone for the year. In other words, even Yom Kippur, and Sukkot, and Simchas Torah, and Pesach, and Shavuos, and all the Yom Tovim, they pale in comparison to the Rosh Hashanah. From this angle, from this perspective, they're not the brain, they're not the nerve center. They are already particulars. The hands, the feet, the stomach, the eyes, the nose, etc., etc. And that's why on Rosh Hashanah, the Svarim HaKadoshim, the Holy Svarim, write how important it is to guard and watch the head, that the head should be just with God, with Hashem. And when you set the tone right on Rosh Hashanah, that the nerve center is healthy and proper, then the rest of the limbs and the year turn out better. So this is regarding Rosh Hashanah. Then yesterday, Tu B'Shvat is called Rosh Hashanah Li'Ilanos. It's the head of the year for trees. So obviously, there's a message and a connection between the concept of a nerve center for trees on this day that's relevant to the rest of the year. And the tone is set for the concept of trees, which we're going to talk about in a moment, all on Rosh Hashanah. So what is the idea of Ilanos? So the simple idea of Ilanos is growth. A tree is planted and it's small, and then it grows. It grows sometimes to the right, to the left, center, but it grows. So the essence of Ilanos is growth. We call this in Hebrew tzaymeach, growth, right? And what's the nekuda? What's the point? The point is that the idea of growing and growth is established on Tu B'Shvat. Because since Tu B'Shvat is Rosh Lilonos, it's the head of the trees, the head of growth. So the nerve center for growth is on Rosh Hashanah. And that's a magnificent idea. It's a gewaldic insight and observation to live with on Tu B'Shvat and subsequent days to Tu B'Shvat, like today, the day after. So when we talk about growth, when we talk about smicha, the first thing that we have to ask ourselves, are we growing? Anyone that says, I am a finished and complete fruit or tree, and I smell well, I look well, and people look at me and observe me and pick my fruit and everything else, thank you very much. If you yourself, tree, are not growing, then ultimately your fruit will die out, your appearance will die out, and people will stop gravitating to this tree. And the same is in our daily life. This is the basic message. The basic message is that regardless of how old you are and how knowledgeable you are and how seasoned you are and everything else, if you stop growing, you become stale. We say in the Gemara, Nekoit hai klola biyodach, which means grab. Nekoit means to grab this klal. It's Aramaic. Grab this rule biyodach in your hands. Listen to this rule, and you'll be on the right page. What's the rule? You have to keep on growing. Anyone that tells you, I don't care how old or smart they are, I already know it. I don't need to grow more. Stay away from them. Don't listen to their advice. Sorry. The basic tenet for success in Avodas Hashem is there's so much I don't know and I want to grow. Till the last day of a person's life. And this is the message for Rosh Ilonos. It's determined on this day that the trees, this is the nerve center for growth. So what we invest in on Tu B'Shvat, besides eating the Shiva Minim and then making a Tu B'Shvat Sedorim and everything else and brachas, and it's all beautiful and gewaldic and holy. We have to go back to the basics. Let's not forget about the basics. And the basics is, it's Rosh Hashanah Li'Ilonos, it's the Rosh Hashanah for trees that grow. That's one very important message, a simple message, and yet an important message. Another point that I heard from the Rebbe many times, because the Rebbe would farbring in the last 10, 15 years of farbrengens, he would make a farbrengen on Tu B'Shvat. I think Yoini or someone sent me some clips they have online of farbrengens where they brought the Rebbe fruit, and you could see how he was so meticulous making the bracha on which type before the other type, because it says in the pasuk Eretz, Chita, Seira, Gefen, V'Rimayin, and all, right? So there's an order in the wording in the verse that the land of Eretz Yisrael has been blessed with Shiva Minim. So according to Jewish law, when you have all the minim in front of you, or some of them, you need to follow that order to make the brachas. And I just saw on the way here a clip where the Rebbe would always have by a farbrengen wine that he would make a hagofen on, and some cake that he would make a mezainis on. And on Tu B'Shvat, they would put down a whole plate, which looks like dates and probably some pomegranate and grapes. So on this clip, you see how he's looking. He turns the kaira, the plate, the platter around, and he wasn't satisfied. He spoke to Rabbi Yunik, who I guess was an aide to help him. So he asks him, "Is there a complete te'ena?" A complete te'ena. And Yunik, the Rebbe couldn't find it, so Yunik found it on the platter, and he pointed it out to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe took it, and he made a bracha, and he ate the entire te'ena. He didn't break it first, because he's supposed to make a bracha on something that's shalem, that's complete. But before he did that, he drank some wine, because that comes first in the pasuk, and he also ate a piece of cake. It's just very interesting how he was just following the Shulchan Aruch, but here you get to see on the screen how a frum Jew, it has nothing to do with being a Rebbe.
Where's the cake coming? I saw that also the Belzer Rebbe. He has cake.
Chita.
Where does that come from?
Wheat. Chita Saira. Wheat, barley. Right? They come first in the Posik. Eretz, Chita, Usaira. Right? So they come first. So anyway, if you take a look at this little clip and you look at the verse, you'll see how he's so meticulous, and it's so beautiful to see, because this is a frum Jew. This has nothing to do with being a Rebbe, Tzaddik, and a Chassid. It has to do with any Jew that wants to follow the Shulchan Aruch. So, but talking about another lesson that Rebbe always shared, and I share it with you, what are we celebrating on Tu B'Shvat? On Tu B'Shvat, we're celebrating fruits, right? Fruits and produce, wheat. But one of the things we're celebrating is fruits. What is fruit? Fruits are usually either the cocktail or the dessert. In other words, they're not the bulk and the main part of the meal. The main part is fish, chicken, or whatever, milchiks, whatever you have. But the fruit is either an opener, like a cocktail, or a closer, a dessert. So what does that mean? What does that not in our Avodas Hashem? This represents something that on one hand is not necessary. It's not like the fish and the meat in the main course, but yet it either opens you up to have appetite, or it finishes your appetite. And what is it that does that? The fruit. What does fruit represent? Tainug, pleasure. There are things that are necessary and things that are luxuries. A friend of mine would tell his children when it came to shidduchim, make me a list of what you feel is important in a spouse. I'd like, make me a list of 6 things, 8, whatever, make me a list, so that when we look for a shidduch, we'll know what you're looking for. And they come back with 6, 8, 10 things. He takes the list, he tears up the list, and he says, now make me a list of not what you want, but what you need, and you don't get more than 2. There are wants and there are needs. Here, the message is just the opposite. The fruit is not a need, it's a want, right? You don't need to eat fruit and dessert. You can, an appetizer. You could just have the meal and you'll be so nice and full. What do you need to have, an appetizer? What do you need to have, a closer, a dessert? I want it. It tastes good. Oh. So the message is that there's the pleasure that a person looks for. And that pleasure, although not a need, rather a want, can be used, if done right, for the service of Hashem. So here we see how Yiddishkeit, how Torah, doesn't exclude wants, but embraces wants and holifies them and spiritualizes them. And this is important to discuss for a few minutes. The Torah, Judaism, is not a religion that squashes us. If a person feels, and there are people that feel that way, Shabbos is a burden. Yiddishkeit and halacha are restrictions and more restrictions. And I don't want that. I want to feel free. So I don't like this. And this is something we're dealing with now with with everyone, but particularly younger people. The whole culture is a culture of freedom. I do what I want, what makes me feel good. Anything that's restrictive is not for me. So here, and this is very real. This isn't, so like it used to be, right? What would you tell a son or a daughter or a person who feels that way? You don't like it? Too bad. That's the way the yeshivas years ago, and I hope it's less and less today, I would hope and pray, would tell you, you don't like it, you can leave. You can find another yeshiva, you can find another shul, you can find another community. In other words, there was no room for negotiating, for conversation, for understanding. It's my way or the highway. And unfortunately, a lot of people were lost to Yiddishkeit, to Frumkeit this way, because it was very, very uncomfortable and very, very cold and very stuck up, and people don't like that. So, today, we don't use that approach. We use the approach of negotiating, of conversation, of embracing, of talking. So what we experience today is the want is also important. The fruits are also important today, and maybe we could say, Yoni, that today the fruits and the fruit aspect, the pleasure aspect of a person's life is more important than the needs. Now that's a big statement, but what do I mean? If we could tap in to the wants of people and show and train how to use the wants for the betterment of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Torah and family, we'll get a lot far further. Because if we could show how the Torah and how Yiddishkeit does understand your freedom and does work with your freedom and does give room for your independence and your autonomy and your creativity, we'll have a lot more adherence and interest within the cycle of the Jewish experience as the Torah sees it. But it takes creativity, and it takes, number one, the openness on part of the leaders and rabbis and scholars and teachers and parents to acknowledge that this is important. So this day of Tu B'Shvat, in addition to dealing with the needs, is all about the wants, the pleasure. A fruit is pleasurable. A fruit is not meat and chicken and fish and the main course. So yes, we could exist without the main course. But I don't want to. I want to indulge. I want to have pleasure. No problem. Let's see how we can find a kosher indulgence. I go back to the Shabbaton that I went to yesterday that I shared with you because I'm still, it's buzzing, it's fresh in my mind, the Shabbos. I can't say there was indulgence there except for one area, food. I mean, there was, food all over, and in addition to I'll give you an example. I think Yain will be able to relate to this. Avram, you too. The Shachris was a 3.5 hour Shachris. It was like a Karlbach Shachris, but with Chazonis more. Although they used half of the tunes probably were Shlomo Karlbach's tunes. And this is in Satmar and bells. This was the most Hasidic group. There was no modernity here. I told you yesterday, this was like the spitz of the spitz, the top, the most frummies, okay? And meanwhile, this 18-man choir, 18 men, I heard it cost $35,000 just to have them there for the Shabbos.
Wow.
Every person gets $1,200 or so, and then the conductor, who's phenomenal, and I had box seats, how he does it was phenomenal. He gets probably more. And the chazan, they have a chazan, he gets paid separately by the hotel. He probably gets $10,000, $15,000. Anyway, it was a real production. So it took, we started 9 o'clock. I don't think we finished about 12:30, 3.5 hours. Okay, but it was beautiful. I thought it was really pleasure. It was really kind of. Now after, and you know, most of these Hasidim don't eat before davening. In Chabad and Bells, they have a coffee, but they don't have any cake or any fruit. You know, so you know, getting up 8 o'clock, 7:38, and not eating till 12:30, till you know you're hungry. So the meal, the main hall, there were 800 to 1,000 people between men and women with a full mechitza, no sitting together. It was the, you know, the highest of the highest in the standard. Anyway, so I finished davening. I went into the main hall. I, you know, found a seat, invited a friend or two, and we sat together. And I washed. You know, we're going to start a meal. You wash. And they had fish, and it was very good. Different types of fishes, 5 different types of fishes. But I see that most of the hall is empty. I reminded myself, when I passed from the shul to the dining hall, there were tables full of herrings and cakes and whiskey and wine and sodas and crackers. Who wants to eat that? You're going to eat a meal now. Guess what? Most of the people, before they went into the hall, they went to this area and they made kiddush, you know, the little shot glasses probably, and they had about 7 different types of herrings. They finished that. They came in and they washed. Now, I'm asking you, why was it necessary to have that kiddush part in between? You're just going to stuff yourself up, and here you're going to have a full-blown meal, a delicious meal. I didn't even stay for the chont. I left after the fish. I was full. Both Friday night and Shabbos morning, I did not stay for the main meal. Besides the fact that they had speakers and they were going on and on, I wasn't up to that and I was tired. Right? But if you know you're going to have 3 different types of meats, and you're going to have chonts, and you're going to have kishka, and you're going to, you know, it's all out. Why are you now eating herrings and crackers and cake before? Just to stuff yourself and get sick? But you know what the answer is? That's the way we do it in shul every Shabbos. Every Shabbos is a kiddush in shul. So we stay for the kiddush. We have herring, and we have vodka, and we have soda, and we have cake. And we sit a half an hour, 45 minutes, whatever. We schmooze, mazel tov, hello, goodbye. Then we go home, we have a meal. So even though over here, from the shul to the dining room is 100 feet, and it's all ready for you, as we say in good old Hungarian Yiddish, minig avasaini biyodaini. The words are minig avosenu biyodenu. The custom of our ancestors is in our hands. We do what our ancestors did. And they say it with the Hungarian accent, minhag avosaini biyodaini. This is the way we do it. Don't disturb us. We follow the script. You know, I haven't been at such a Shabbaton ever in my life. And although I grew up in this culture, I live in this culture, but when you see it up close, this was box seats. This was right in my face. And, you know, and I'm totally Chabad, and I think Chabad, and, you know what I'm saying? I'm trained differently, but Baruch Hashem, I'm able to be open enough to look at this and see it, and not say disgusting, but observe, and walk away with ways of understanding it. So why am I saying all this? This long, drawn-out story of a Shabbos meal at this Shabbaton. On one hand, you could say, Yaini, it's disgusting. You're just indulging, Avram. You're going to have a Shabbos meal with 5 different types of fish, 4 different types of meats, chont, desserts, Don't ask. Isn't that enough? You need herring, vodka and cake and soda before? It's an indulgence and a very sick indulgence because you're going to get sick. You're going to blow up and The answer is this is the way we do it. It's our pleasure. We consider this a pleasure. So on one hand, you could say, hey, organizers of the Shabbaton, don't give, don't serve that. You'll save yourself thousands of dollars, whatever it costs, to have this extravagant kiddush in addition to the meal. Cut it out, you save 10 grand, let's say, and it's healthier for people. No. They provide the way people are accustomed to. And I think it's an important lesson, Moshe. You're a gabbai in shul, you're involved. A shul, an organization, you as you and your wife, people, we as hosts, we need to provide. I always tell my wife, the fact that I shouldn't eat salt and my wife cooks without salt for herself and myself, and I say it's wonderful, but it's not guests. It's not batam. Guests want to have food with salt. And it's a balance and a challenge. How do what are you going to cook separate meal? The point is, we're talking about, Moshe, that today we need to take indulgences, which is the idea of Ilonos. This is a shir on Tu B'Shvat. Fruits, which is delight. It's either the appetizer or it's the dessert. It's not the main course, which represents the wants of a person, not the needs. Today, the wants have become needs, and we need to show how the wants can be made holy. Right? It used to be that it's needs, and that's it. And you don't like it? Out. Well, we lost a whole generation. Today, we need to take the wants of a person and say, come, let's find ways of using your wants for serving God as well. And that's what they did. So they provide the full-blown kiddush. If you're foolish and you stuff yourself up and then you have a meal, you're a fool. But if you want to just keep the tradition, take a drop, say l'chaim, and go into the main hall and have the meal. And if not, that's your personal choice. And the same is with everything in life. We need to provide for our children and grandchildren, our friends and families and communities, the right way, the best way, and that includes also things that people appreciate. I just read yesterday a letter that was written in 1948 from Paris to Poking, Germany. Poking was a DP camp, and there was from Yidden, including the Lubavitchers, that were still there. And this Chabad rabbi who writes to some friends of his, he says that the previous Rebbe is sent to Lubavitcher Bochum from 770, or Rabbi Posner, Zalman Posner became a rabbi in Nashville, Tennessee later, and Rabbi Mendel Baumgarten, who lived later in Crown Heights. And he's sending them to Europe to visit Jews and be mechazik and strengthen Jews that are downtrodden and upset because of the Holocaust and everything else. So the rabbi writes to the two rabbis in Poking, he says, and we're going to make a fabrengen. And then he says, what's a fabrengen? We're going to have a little herring and a little l'chaim. And he says, and we're not going to make the fabrengen into a full party and food, and because it's a fabrengen. You see, and I know who wrote that, and I know where he came from. He was from Russia, and then he lived in Paris, and I know the mindset. It was the same mindset of, we're going to impose on you what Hasidus is and the way a fabrengen should be. And we're not going to make a fabrengen into a lavish party, because then it's not a fabrengen. So in principle, he's right. In principle, he's right. A fabrengen is not a time to have a lavish meal. Because if you get wrapped up in the meal, you lose the whole impact of the fabrengen. However, then, and in that situation where he was talking about people of the same ilk and the same mindset, it could work. But you do that today, guess what? No one's coming to your Farbrengen. What do people like? They come in, they see a full table of food. That's already a beginning. Right? Imagine they come in, they see a little vodka, a little scotch, and a piece of herring, and a kichel. They're not going to come back, for sure. In their mind, they're going to walk away. Wow, these people are stingy, these people don't have, these people don't want, and all that. So Rabbi say, the message is that today we need to use Gashmias, have a lot of Gashmias, and use it for Hashem. That's what the Rebbe taught us. Not to negate Gashmias, but we should, again, not to lose sight of what's the Ikar and what's the Tough, what's primary and what's ancillary, but to be blessed and to use as much Gashmis as you can for the sake of Hashem. And this way, many people that wouldn't come along for the ride would come along. I just want to say that one of the reasons for the assimilation and the breakdown in Poland in particular in the 1920s and 30s, and I had this in my own family, and I heard this, was the poverty was terrible. And the young people said, enough. We don't want to all be in one room, 8, 10 people, mother, father, and kids, and sleep on straw and not have what to eat. We're sick and tired. We're going to America, we're going to Israel, we're going to Costa Rica, we're going to South America. And they left. And they left. And with that, their beards came off, their yarmulkes came off, their shekels came off, and they left. Because poverty is something that especially the youth can't relate to it. So I grew up with my father, talking about eating dark, hard pumpernickel bread and being happy at a piece of bread during the 40s when he was a young boy and there was starvation all around. I mean, I heard that. He lived it, and my father-in-law for sure, even in the 30s. And that's important. I benefited because I took it the right way. But a lot of people don't. And they say, I don't want. My uncle, who was born in 48, I think, so he came at the tail end, he once told me, I asked him, could you tell me about your past? He says, Chaim, I try to forget my past. It's too painful. The hardships were so hard, I just don't want to go there. So we need to, put all this into perspective in today's world, in today's life and generation, and figure a way how to balance the two and understand that what was good 50 years ago or 30 years ago might not work today in the marketing of the product. And so today, really, it's about the marketing of all these things. And this is something that I in my books, I try to communicate in a various way. You don't have to water down Yiddishkeit and Hasidishkeit. You don't need to water it down. You shouldn't water it down. But just be clever in the marketing of it. Make it desirable for the new world. And when you do that, within the confines of Halacha and Hasidus, we see, Baruch Hashem, not just Chabad, Eish Torah, or Sameach, all the Baal Tshuva movements, all the Frum movements, there's more and more. The Belzer, there's more and more receptivity and openness to understanding people's wants, not only their needs. I have another shir. I'd love to talk, but I have to go. We'll continue tomorrow. Zay gesund, Rebbe. Bye-bye. Have a good day.
Thank
Thank you.